President Buhari leaves for Saudi Arabia on official visit Tuesday.
Minister of Information and Culture continues engagements with foreign media on outcome of 2023 election.
Federal government approves 75% subsidy on all farm inputs.
We can map the type of soil in the whole country using this particular facility.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss oil subsidy removal.
Nigeria's black gold, reputed to be the life wire of its revenue and export, was discovered in large quantity before her independence in 1960.
Yes, but since then, it's been a tale of mixed bag of prosperity and problems, with the fortunes keep coming highs and lows. From over independence and the reliance on the black gold to losing about 600,000 barrels of crude oil per day to oil theft and illegal bunkering over the years.
Indeed, Kiran, and while the self-imposed sticky situation, as some called it, deepened, the cost of fuel subsidy continued to rise exponentially, and experts pointed fingers to increase in fuel prices and Nigeria's rising population as the cause.
Official statistics indicate that Nigeria spends 18 billion naira a day, amounting to 540 billion naira a month on fuel subsidy alone. These financial analysts argue that the continuous payment of such huge amount for subsidy is taking a big toll on Nigeria's debt and fiscal deficit.
And in the 2022 national budget, capital expenditure stood at 5.4 trillion naira, while subsidy, which was initially projected to go up 4 trillion naira, eventually took a whopping 7 trillion naira down with it.
This year alone, the Nigerian government budgeted about 3 trillion naira for fuel subsidy in the first half of 2023. For some observers, this poses a grim outlook on unsustainability of the scheme. In addition, many are of the opinion that the regime encourages corruption, regressive in nature, and stifles economic developmental funds.
In the past, successful governments tried to abolish the subsidy program, but met with stiff resistance from the public, with protests and unrest across the country.
Yes, indeed. And after the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House last week, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, disclosed that Nigeria had negotiated and secured $800 million from the World Bank to cushion the effect of the subsidy, which is to commence in the second quarter of the year.
And according to the minister, the loan will be the first tranche of palliatives to be disbursed through cash transfers to about 50 million Nigerians who are in the most vulnerable category in the society. But reactions continue to emerge as some point out that the last official pronouncement about the country's debt profile puts it at 77 trillion naira, making it imperative for the federal government to take a step back in funding subsidies.
Yes, these are open figures, if you ask me, Jimmy. And others are also of the opinion that against the backdrop of 133 million Nigerians in poverty, the resultant effect of the fuel subsidy removal might aggravate inflation and subsequently push back unemployment.
Indeed, Kiran, and according to some experts, the procurement of the loan as a preliminary step towards the removal of fuel subsidy raises several issues. Now, the argument is reportedly within the context of Nigeria's present microeconomic fundamentals.
Exactly, and would the loan be useful or otherwise in effecting the removal of fuel subsidy? What are the prospective issues when the subsidy payment is finally stopped? What will be the fate of the downtrodden if and when implemented? What are the global best practices in this sector? These are some of the issues that we shall be raising when we engage our guests this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Kirian Umayo. Welcome to this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA.
And indeed, already, you know, Kieran, all marketers are proposing building about 30,000 gas stations to cushion the effect of the proposed subsidy removal on petrol. If this is anything to go by, how effective will it be? And will it create a competitive environment for the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act? Well, I am Jumma Yusuf. We'll have our complimentary segments in the course of the program, and that includes newspaper review, business, and orders. First, let's take the news with Nolin Abel Ame. Hello, Nolin. It's a beautiful morning. Happy Easter.
Thank you very much, Jumai. Good morning to you and Kirian, and good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari is traveling to Saudi Arabia on official visit from today, April 11 to 19, 2023. This is his last trip to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a president, during which he will perform Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, in a statement said the President will be accompanied by his aides. Meanwhile, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has arrived to London on a second leg of his engagements with foreign media and think tank installations on the outcome of the 2023 elections, particularly the presidential poll.
We achieved our mission in Washington to correct the imbalance in the skewed narrative which had pervaded the air, especially with international media organizations, international think tanks. We are going to repeat the same thing in London to let the world know that this is the freest election Nigeria has ever held.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has projected global growth of 3% to last for a period of 5 years. Managing Director, IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, stated this at the opening of the 2023 spring meeting while speaking on the topic Building Resilience and Reshaping Development.
The remarkable resilience of consumer spending in the United States, in Europe, despite the uplift from China's reopening, global growth would remain below 3% as we projected it earlier this year. And what is more concerning, it would remain around 3% for the next 5 years.
And back home, 2023 farming season receives a boost as the federal government has approved 75% subsidy on all farm inputs to ensure bumper harvest. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Muhammad Mahamud Abubakar, stated this after inaugurating projects at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria.
That can be done with nuclear, even in terms of agri. For example, you can map the type of soil in the whole country using this particular facility.
Latest disbursement of 320.3 billion as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions is yet another evidence of President Muhammadu Buhari's desire to improve higher education in the country. This was emphasized in a statement issued by the Buhari Media Organization, signed by its chairman, Nia Kinsuju, and Secretary Kasidi Maduekwe. The statement notes that the 2023 Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, disbursement to the tertiary institutions is the highest in 30 years. An independent judiciary is described as the backbone for effective application of rule of law in Nigeria and ensuring rights of citizens are respected as enshrined in the Constitution. This view is shared by stakeholders who are calling for effective implementation of judicial autonomy while stating its implications to democracy.
If this issue of judicial autonomy is made to manifest the way it should be, that means the judiciary, they will have ability to have their own funds, control the way they manage their sector.
When you are autonomous and you are conscious of the fact that you have your own independence, you see that the tendency to dispense justice without fear or favor, even with quick dispensation, all this will be there.
That's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Kirian and Jumai after the commercial break. Please don't go away. I am Nolene Ebel-Ame. Good morning.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. On business news, international airfares on 20% increase after foreign airlines raise exchange rate for ticket sales. Let's join Tope Alabi for details.
International airfares on Nigerian routes have gone up further by over 20% after foreign airlines raised the exchange rate for ticket sales. International travelers on Nigerian routes have been paying higher airfares after carriers blocked their inventory of cheaper tickets in order to cushion the effects of the rising amount of about $743 million trapped funds in Nigeria. A travel agent, Susan Akpuri, said this has brought some uncertainties to the aviation sector.
Okay, let's even take the three major routes, UK, US and Canada. If we had in national carrier, a Nigerian airline that goes to those three routes, yeah, this problem we are facing, we won't feel it. We won't even know there is a problem, because I will still be doing good business. Everybody will still be doing good business, and Nigerians will still have opportunity to travel at 350,000 naira or less, because then the national carrier will not have an issue of trap funds because it's indigenous to the country.
She emphasized that vibrant aviation sector will complement the federal government quest of diversifying the economy. In the meantime, oil marketers have written to the federal government over their proposal to build about 30,000 gas stations to cushion the effects of the proposed subsidy removal on premium motor spirits. Nigerians are currently counting down on the June 2023 projected date for subsidy removal as the call for palliatives to ameliorate the impact of the halt in subsidy is gaining momentum. In its communication to the Ministry of Finance, the marketers want the federal government to compel the Central Bank of Nigeria to release 250 billion naira intervention fund for the National Gas Expansion Program as loans to vehicle owners to acquire gas conversion kits. With business news, I'm Tope Alabi.
Many thanks to you, Tope, for the business package. And next on the program is a review of today's dailies.
And our newspaper reviewer, Chukudi Okole-Okbaja, is in the studio. Good morning, Chukudi.
Hello, Jumai. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
I got your name right? Jumai.
Jumai.
Jumai. Those of us in this house will just go Jumai. I will move on. Hello, Kirian.
Chukudi, welcome to the program.
You're welcome.
Yes, we have about three papers here.
Yes.
And Chukudi, well, obviously we have more. But let's go to the Punch newspaper for a start. Punch newspaper for a start. And above the name flag of the newspaper, Buhari should suspend fuel subsidy removal, declare marketers. Well, that's on page 19. Get details of that. UK restriction can't stop doctors' migration. UK restriction can't stop doctors' migration. As NMA and NAD. That's on page 8. Port reconstruction will cost $800 million, says NPA boss. It's on page 10. Okay, now below the name flag and, of course, the lead story on the Punch newspaper this morning, we have APC kicks as northern senators insist on Senate presidency. There are riders to that. Ndume Kano, Niger senators poised to contest, say Senate needs competent hands. And any Muslim aspiring to be Senate president lacks respect for constitution. That's according to Vice Chairman. APC yet to decide on zoning, but won't allow another Saraki Dogara scenario, says a spokesman. All right, the photo story is that of Easter celebration in Lagos and FCT yesterday and the day before that. But below that, we have other stories. Enumerators indicted for sexual harassment will be dismissed. That's according to NPC. It's on page 8. Gunmen abduct Kano businessman, shoot one dead. It's on page 5. Nigerian unemployment rate to hit 41% in 2023. That's a KPMG, that's an analysis by the KPMG. It's on page 10 of the Punch newspaper. That's for details of that story and others.
Let's quickly go to the Leadership newspaper, and above the masthead, we have Tambuwal petitions INEC over relisting of polling units for rerun. You find details on page 14. And bill to halt doctors' immigration modern-day slavery. Find the details on page 6 too. And just below the masthead, Khan demands apology over peak milk advert on Good Friday. Find that on page 7. 48 days to go, Presidency defends PMB's performance. Details on page 7. And the headlines in the Leadership newspaper: APC at daggers drawn over zoning of National Assembly leadership. With riders, Lukman Ndo Egba asks lawmakers to be fair to all zones. Izunaso to slug it out with Kalu in Southeast. EFCC declines comment on monitoring dollar-carrying aspirants. All the details on page 4. A side piece of the headlines in the Leadership newspaper: insecurity remain focused. Army chief tells troop. Find details on page 6. NCAA grants NG Eagle AOC may fly as national carrier. Details on page 21. Police arrest 40 suspected members of criminal syndicate in Abuja. Find the details on page 8. Coming to the Sun newspaper, at the side piece of the Sun newspaper, Benue killings. Magban urges security to find killers. Find the details on page 4. Any Muslim aspiring for Senate President disrespectful to leaders? Buhari, Tinubu, APC National Working Committee member. Why Kalu should occupy the seat? That's coming from a group. You find the details on 6 and 29. Ebonyi, Ogba, PDP defer on 2023 polls, rallies, support for governor-elect. Nwifuru, you find the details on page 27. Obedience must bear attacks as sacrifice for new Nigeria. That's coming from the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Obi. Says effort to demarket movement will fail. You find the details on page 27. Kanu won't abandon struggle for Biafra. That's coming from IPOP. Queries Supreme Court silence over appeal. And concerns grows as Nigeria's foreign investment declined for third straight year, down 20.5%. You find the details on page 24. And Clark calls for minister's arrest, trial over treason allegation, with riders accuses Lai Mohammed of spreading fake news against Obi. And at the bottom plate of the Daily Sun, Buhari leaves for Saudi Arabia. That's about what we have in the papers this morning. Chukuri.
Yes, thank you very much. You said army authorities are saying that security is still very much in focus. Yeah. Good talk at this time. When we had the Naira crunch period, and it seemed as if terrorists and insurgents and kidnappers were put out of business, we hoped it was all going to go on, and it will be El Dorado, eventually coming into focus. But look what's happening now. The death toll from the Benue killings, has crossed 134, thereabout. And it's not as if those who kill people in Benue were asking for ransom. So what it means is that the super security network that the security men put in place during the election period will seem to have relaxed a bit. And don't blame them. Boots on the ground in tackling Nigeria's security issues isn't a very simple matter, because we have troops that are far short of what we really need to parade. How many millions? 200 million people, the reports say.
More than.
The police themselves, we need more of them. So at the end of the day, you're going to say that these men in uniform are trying, but we still want them to do more. That's it. APC INEC to Poll Tribunal, Obi's petition a waste of time. In their submissions to the Presidential Election Petition Court, PEPC, the APC and INEC portrayed the Labour Party suit as unmeritorious. Okay? That's a long adjective there. Now, these must be opening arguments, if you ask me. At the end of the day, what's going to matter is the weight of evidence each party advances, to shore up their case. One matter that will continue to remain curious is the fact that when INEC pronounces a candidate winner, and that decision is eventually challenged, the election umpire almost inevitably would argue alongside the candidate pronounced winner. Yes, because if they don't do that, that means you're saying INEC did a shoddy job. So it is not usually a case of the candidate or political party needing to bear the full weight of the onus of proof of inculpability. It's quite an interesting scenario. But I guess it is a scenario that is understandable. But it shouldn't be that way all the way, if you ask me. For instance, in cases of alleged violence, I want to think that the political party or candidate in question will bear more the onus of proving that the relevant case of violence isn't one that challenges the victory recorded. It would be their matter then, more than that of INEC. And it will be interesting if we can get a situation where INEC says, defend yourselves about the violence being talked about now, because INEC is never ever for violence. It's all going to be interesting how these things work out at the courts.
It's going to be interesting. Actually,
very, very.
The presidential election is over, and the cases are in the courts right now, but
the cases are in court.
Yeah, in court right now,
the
war has moved from the ballot to the social media. Twitter is at war.
Thank you.
You go on Twitter, it's as if the world is exploding. Nigeria is at war with each other, and I still believe that campaigns are over. We'll wait for the outcome in the courts to decide the outcome of it.
The good thing, Jumai,
yes,
we have managed the unseeming, or rather the strange development on social media and on the streets when we have gone to court.
Yes.
We are managing it well. Yeah. Democracy seems to tolerate a lot of things.
A lot of things. That's why it's a democracy, actually.
There's one story that Jumai read, and that has to do with the pig milk advertorial that Khan complained about.
Remember, there was a case some years back.
Yes,
a bank or something.
My worry about the story is that I didn't see the advertorial.
I didn't see
but
it too,
for Khan to make comment about something, if you like, injurious, what it did with respect to the Easter celebration. And of course, we have the Advertising Practitioners of Nigeria, which is a regulatory body for adverts, put out on TV and radio, APCON. Now, before the advert went on air, I'm not sure that APCON, was able to watch, because usually you have to watch physically to identify whatever error that might be in the package before it goes on air. I don't know whether they still do that, because PIC is an old business consortium, right? So it's been there over the years, for over 50 years. So I wonder why that happened. Then another one, Chukwudi, if you may like to comment there, is the drop in foreign investment in Nigeria, which Jumai also read. Yeah. It's a very critical issue, because any nation that does not have a reasonable quantum of foreign investors, they're going to have issues. Because one, when you have foreign investors, that means employment for Nigerians, because invariably If a business organization, set into Nigeria that has a multinational outlook,
yes,
Nigerians are going to benefit.
And the economy generally smiles.
Exactly.
Let me start with the last one you mentioned. Or rather, the one on pig milk. I don't know what it's all about, but maybe they found something offensive there. Mm-hmm. The advertiser sometimes gets conceited. In literature, we actually call it conceit, where a shot of ego goes into the belief that ads seem to work on the principle that a small pellet or pattern set in a noisy, redundant barrage of repetitions will gradually assert itself. At a point, you begin to think the way they want you to think. Whether the service or product is relevant to your life does not quite matter. Exactly. So maybe they said something that crossed the line. I remember when I was still in secondary school, CNN had one. They were boasting about how much they were diligent with their work. And they said that they were sure that when Jesus Christ comes again, they will be there to report it. And the Christians cried out. That advert did not last. But it tells you what the human spirit could attempt from time to time.
And for me, it is quite unethical. If I'm to speak on that, it's unethical. For you to be mentioning the name of a Messiah, when you are dealing with some physical things that we're doing to convince people that you are the best. For me, it is not correct. I wouldn't do that. To say, look, why mention Jesus Christ, for instance? I mean,
it would hurt Christians. I mean, the Christian Messiah, Jesus Christ, used, it's not just Christianity, really. You have to learn to respect a man's faith. Faith is faith. It's spiritual. Be careful when you talk about a man's faith. It might sound stupid or nonsensical to you, but leave the man alone if he's not hurting the environment with his belief.
Exactly. Now, Chukudi, one more before we round off. UK restriction can't stop doctors' migration, according to the NMA. So this issue of doctors migrating to other parts of the world has continued unabated, even with the restrictions that they are talking about.
And the bill has been passed second reading in the National Assembly.
Before now, another opinion, this suggests, that there is nothing wrong really in doctors migrating to elsewhere, because it's also building a diaspora contribution to national development, and that if we can churn out more doctors in Nigeria, open more medical schools in Nigeria, well, we could be harvesting doctors from this part of the world, to other parts of the world.
We have been harvesting Dr. Cullen and they've been stealing them away.
Yes.
We harvest doctors every year. Thousands of doctors graduate from our universities.
I guess we don't have more time, so let me quickly say that skills flight, not capital now.
Yes.
Skills flight would never ever augur well for any country in the long run, in the long term.
Well, okay, fine. Let's end it there.
Let's be careful.
But when it comes to ICT, for instance, what India has done, is clear to you that the skilled flight you talked about can work, because in India today, when it comes to ICT, they are the host. When you dial anybody, it hits in there before it goes out, right? And it's because of the capital flight. The skills flight you talked about, because they sent their men away, to go and do that.
But they still have enough to service the home environment.
Exactly. This is a topic for another day. We're running out of time.
Yes.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, Tuesday's edition, and we'll take a break. When we return, more will come your way. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and to begin our conversation on oil subsidy removal, here's a background report put together by our correspondent, Joseph Osen.
One statement that was common on the lips of almost all candidates contesting the 2023 presidential election was removal of fuel subsidy. The stand is that the country is spending so much on the intervention, yet Nigerians still struggle to access the fuel, while much of the subsidized products are diverted to neighboring countries where distributors make huge profits. Another argument is that the funds estimated to be more than 6.4 trillion naira annually, as described by the Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed when she appeared before the House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating the fuel subsidy regime from 2013 to 2022, could have been used to support other critical sectors such as social protection, healthcare and education. Previous governments have made attempts to end the subsidy business but could not stand the backlash and pressure from organized labor who harped the hardship citizens will face. Experts have suggested making the nation's refineries work as baseline for smooth exit, but to date, getting the refineries work seems far-fetched. Nevertheless, the present administration has taken the bold step to end subsidy reign by June 2023. It says it is laying the right foundation to cushion the pain projected to befall the masses. Last week, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, while briefing State House correspondents, announced that government has secured $800 million from the World Bank to support Nigerians identified as vulnerable.
That will enable us to give cash transfers to the most vulnerable in our society that have now been registered in a national social register. Today that register has a list of 10 million households. 10 million households is equivalent to about 50 million Nigerians.
The government also pledges to go beyond cash transfer and implement other medium-term measures such as mass transit to reduce suffering of workers. The removal of fuel subsidy will take place a month after the new government will be inaugurated, and many are pondering how the start will be like for the new regime. How prepared is the country to cut ties with the fuel subsidy regime? These and other related issues will be engaging guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you indeed, Joseph, for setting the tone for this conversation. And here in the studio we have our guests who are going to do justice to the topic. And first, may I introduce Professor Uche Owaleke, Professor of Capital Market, Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Prof, this is your home base. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Nigerian. Good morning, Nigerians.
Also, I'll introduce Chijoke Amonu, independent marketer and the managing director, Gas Analytics and Solutions Limited. I hope I got that correctly.
Yes,
thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you and good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
And also joining us in the studio is Olayemi Success, Chief Convener, Civil Society for Justice and Equity. Good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
And my sister and friend, Faith Wadishi, is Executive Director, Transparency Advocacy Center. She also joins us here to sort of talk about this issue. It's been a burning issue for quite some time, and it just refuses to go away.
Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Faith, you're welcome. You are an all-rounder, from election to subsidy. Good to have you again here.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, subsidy was initially implemented in Nigeria in the early 70s. That's in reaction to the 1973 oil price shock, which caused a global spike, in oil prices. And the subsidy has also been known to have, in Nigeria, distorted fiscal planning. It has also showed inefficient consumption and increase in inequality. There are many dimensions to this. But first of all, I'd like us to begin by asking Professor Owaleke to lead us into why this subsidy, which was an action taken to cushion an effect, has become so elastic that we're still talking about it today.
Thanks so much, Kirian. Just as you said, you rightly observed, it's one issue that has refused to go away. It's been on for a long time. I think the last episode, as it were, in Nigeria was in 2012, when there was a bold move to remove a subsidy, even though that didn't eventually succeed. But let me say from the onset that I am in support of fuel subsidy removal for a number of reasons, which you also started mentioning. One of which is the distortions, it causes in the economy, fiscal distortion, distortion, to borrow your word. If you look at the amount we budget for subsidy, on an annual basis. That amount is humongous. In 2023, for example, what we have set aside for subsidy, just for the first 6 months, is over 3 trillion. As a matter of fact, 3.3 trillion, just for the first three months. So if you extrapolate that for 1 year, you are talking about an amount in excess of 6 trillion. And then you now ask this question, what's the total size of your capital budget for 2023? Just 5.4 trillion. So you have an amount you are voting for subsidy that's in excess of your capital, capital vote. So that tells you that the opportunity cost is very high. And look at one of the major challenges the country is facing today, in terms of the economy, which is the debt burden. Okay, part of why the debt burden is what it is today, at over 46 trillion naira. Okay, not even including the ways and means from the central bank, over 20 trillion. Part of why it is what it is today has also to do with the subsidy. Just last year, 2022, the report by the Debt Management Office says that we spend over 3 trillion servicing debt alone, in debt service alone. So the cost is humongous. Whether the opportunity cost, the total cost of subsidy is becoming a burden, for us in Nigeria. And even if you look at the social side, the environmental issues, the fact that this subsidy regime has been enabling, smuggling of products out of Nigeria. Okay, so however you look at it, it is not in the interest of the economy to continue to sustain this subsidy. And if you come to look at it critically, Kieran, studies have shown that this subsidy thing is even regressive, in the sense that, yes, it benefits everybody, but it benefits the rich more than the poor. A study by the World Bank has shown that the richest 20% of households in low and middle income countries, including Nigeria, use this fossil fuel, use 6 times more than the poorest 20% of the population. So that tells you that it is regressive. It benefits the rich, more than the poor. So when you look at all the arguments on balance, of course, the major argument for subsidy is that it provides an opportunity for the citizens to benefit from a natural resource that God has blessed them with. Okay, but if you look at the cost, okay, as I said, the total cost of subsidy, it is humongous, and for me, it's not something that we should continue to sustain. So, and I think the it is a good move to attempt to remove subsidy. Maybe later in the program, I will also talk about what country experiences have been. Okay, and for countries that have succeeded, talking about India, for example, Indonesia, what did they do? For many other countries that have witnessed a protest as a result of this, Kazakhstan last year, okay, in particular, okay, again, what were the factors? So maybe in the course of this,
yes, in the course of this conversation, we delve into other issues and the matters arising from the subsidy removal. But I'm going to stay with you briefly. You talked about other countries where they have high income and middle income. In Nigeria, actually, do we have a middle income?
Okay, no, I was talking about the classification of Nigeria by the World Bank. We're a middle income country based on our GDP.
But do we have a middle income? Do we have a middle
GDP?
Class?
Okay, no, that's a different.
Yes, exactly. But the issue here is when the subsidy was introduced in the 70s, Nigeria was doing well economically. And the question from so many people is, why was the subsidy introduced in the first place?
Okay, so you now lending credence to what I said earlier.
Yes.
Now, today we can no longer afford the subsidy regime.
Why was it introduced in the first place? Who did it benefit? Because, in the 1973, there was Udoji. We had so much money. Yes. Civil servants were paid so much money and they went home smiling.
Yes, remember too, at that time, refineries were working.
Yes.
Okay, remember too, I mentioned the point. I said, in many countries, the way they see subsidy is a way to benefit from the natural resource that God has blessed them with. Okay, so even in consumer nations, countries that don't export, you still have one form of subsidy, or the other. But I'm saying in the case of Nigeria, particularly where the refineries are not working and we are importing this petroleum product, okay, we can't afford to continue to maintain subsidies.
Okay, thank you. You know, let's not forget the fact that, you know, oil has always remained the nation's major source of income. As at that time you're talking about, it was, I think, number one.
Yes.
The major, right? And there was an oil glitch or something globally that affected Nigeria. Invariably, no matter like amount of money that you have as a nation in circulation, when the source of the funds are not coming, yes. And then of course this issue of subsidy came on board. Right now, let me bring in Olayemi, the chief convener, Civil Society for Justice and Equity. Right. In your view, the sustenance of oil subsidy for such a long time in Nigeria, how did it affect our administration, financial administration, in terms of a fiscal and monetary policy in Nigeria? Because of course, as we have entered into it, in fact, when we make like 20 years into oil subsidy, it did appear that leaders at that time never thought it necessary to begin to reason towards removing the subsidy by perhaps implementing policies that will lead into that. What is your view? You know, what is your view in the entire mix of the oil subsidy and its sustenance for a very long time?
Thank you very much. The oil subsidy regime has been sustained this far because of fear of unknown, and the fear of confronting our fear. And you know, at certain time in your life, you just have to stand up and confront your fear. Yes, the regime came, perhaps it might be positively conceived with good intention when it was introduced. But then they forgot the popular parlance that as the hunter learned to shoot without basic target, the bird also learned to fly without patience. Now on the negative side now, perhaps the conception was basically to make the people happy, to benefit from the God-given natural resources, to cushion the effect of the global effect of the oil switch then. But then, over time, they have forgotten that the conception and the plan then that was meant for Nigerians alone can again be extended to neighboring nations, which of course we are experiencing now as a sort of porous border, where we cannot adequately say this is the number of liters we consume per day. Where we cannot say, oh, this subsidy is actually meant for Nigerians, and it is only Nigerians that are benefiting or that are enjoying it. Now, this situation has also been on ground for long as well. The fear of, oh, if we decide to change now, what will be the implication? Of course, without any doubt, we know the implication. But that is what takes us to the issue of confronting our fear. By the time you look at what you are losing, what you are missing, and the fear that you are afraid of, compare the two. And now, just suppose it with future, then it should be clear that, oh, you just have to stand up and confront this challenge. Just like in every situation you want to change. As a kid, you're in your father's house, enjoying all the meal without going to school. But all of a sudden, there's this program that, oh, you have to go to school, you leave your father's house by 7 a.m. and come back by 2 a.m. and all of those periods you may not eat, and somebody may flog you and all of that. But then, if you do not have education, you will not even know how to sustain your father's house. That is the truth of the matter. So we just have to stand up and confront this challenge. How do you justify spending 15 billion naira a day for subsidy?
18 now.
Okay.
18 now, yes.
Let me stay with 15 for now. 450 billion per month. For 5-point-something trillion per annum. How do you justify that? Yes, the argument of, oh, by the time you remove this subsidy, everything will go up, there will be a hike in almost all the price. Fine, it is good. That is the fear I am talking about that we have to stand up and confront. By the way, like Prof said, who are we subsidizing for? Who are the chief beneficiaries of this subsidy? Who are the chief beneficiaries of this subsidy? Trickling it down, as according to IMF, the 20% of the rich are the chief beneficiaries 6 times than the poor the poor majority. Now, I think it is necessary to bring this down to the level of perfect understanding of an average Nigerian. Now, we are subsidizing. You know, people will still stand up to say no to subsidy. People will still protest. But I think this opportunity there should be opportunity here for them to understand what is even this subsidy, the implication. And that's one of the things the average viewers out there should benefit from this program. Now, subsidy. What is this subsidy? If we have been hearing subsidy, you see people protesting for and against subsidy.
They don't even understand.
They don't even understand the meaning of subsidy in detail. Okay, now let us take it to the layman level and
break it down.
To break it down. Yes. Subsidy. What is this subsidy? It is the difference between the actual cost of petrol and the price you are buying at the filling station. What do you mean by actual cost? You want to deal in petrol, you want to sell petrol, you import it from outside the country. You calculate just like the way you import US, you calculate your cost, then you add your gain, and at the end of the day you say, okay, to be fair and make my, of course you are in business to make gain. This is what I want to sell it. Government not say, wow, this price is too much for my people. Please sell it at so amount. As at now, 194, 195 naira. You now say, okay, the difference between this 195 and your actual cost I want to sell, I'll pay you back. That is subsidy. I'll give it to you. That is subsidy. Now, this subsidy, who is it benefiting? Is it the market woman that has no vehicle, that doesn't even have generator, and if he or she does, maybe a pass, the one we could popularly call a pass my neighbor, compared to the people that are living in convoy of SUVs, V8 engine, where a distance where you burn 20 liter, if they have to cover the same distance, they may burn as much as 50 to 60 liter. These are the people that government is subsidizing for. And by the time you check all of it all, it is again not discussing the aspect of, oh, is it real? If it's so, if there is corruption there, if this so data is manipulated or one way or the other is maneuvered by the actors, who are the people, who are the beneficiaries, who are the people maneuvering it, who are the people benefiting from this corruption? Is this same with some common people? No. The actors, the key players, they are the ones that know how to say, oh, okay, I've imported fuel and I'm selling 100 liter. Maybe I have not imported anyone. Of course, we have that in the past. So these are the things that the average Nigerians should know about this subsidy. So that by the time they know the detail, I am sure it will be easy for overwhelming majority to say subsidy should go, just as I'm saying it should go now.
Okay, thank you so much for your opening comment. Let me bring in the lady now. Faith, yes, he has broken it down to the barest minimum where the layman can understand what subsidy means. And he says it is for the rich. But at the end of the day, who suffers the brunt of removing the subsidy?
We do, the women. We're the ones who suffer the brunt. Aside the fact that we suffer it, now let me just take it up from where he stopped. When you talk about crude, everybody talks about Nigeria as a crude oil producing nation, but we forget that the crude that we produces other products, which is inclusive of PMS or the petrol that we buy from the filling station. We have the kerosene that the women use at the community level. There's no subsidy on kerosene. Right now in our communities, a bottle of beer, which is almost equivalent to a liter of kerosene, is selling between 800 naira to 1,000 naira. And the poor people are buying it. There is no subsidy on diesel. So these are the products from crude oil that is relatable with the poor people. And these are the ones that we don't pay subsidy on. If you go to the village, even the woman that uses the firewood needs kerosene to light the firewood. Because you have issues around flooding, so the firewood is flooded. You no longer can just strike the match and you put on the firewood. You need to put kerosene. Kerosene is 1,000 naira per a bottle, which is equivalent to 1 liter. And we're talking about fuel, PMS, that we go to the filling station. Now we can come to Abuja, you queue up for 5 hours, 3 hours, and you're able to get fuel for liter at 195 naira. But when last did you buy fuel for 195 naira in this country? Now, let's put the cost of your waiting. If you quantify that cost of your waiting, include it to that 195 naira, are you actually buying fuel at 195 naira? I had to queue up with my son under the sun. In fact, I had to ask him to leave the front seat to go to the back seat because it was scorching hot. And we were just there.
And you were burning fuel?
I was burning fuel. We had to wait there. I went to a filling station the other day to buy fuel. A man almost beat me up after he scratched my car. And I was happy. In fact, I was so happy for Nigerian men now who really understand that you don't need to harass a woman. We are there. And then we have to go home after going through that stress. And we have to go home to prepare for my children. And now we are saying this issue. Now let us take it back to how it started. We have in this country, we have built, with money from the same resources, we have built 4 refineries that are supposed to produce for us 445,000 barrels per day. Now, breaking it down, if you produce 445,000 barrels per day, a barrel of fuel is supposed to give you at least 160 liters. At least 160 liters. Now, let's say you take that 445,000 and you multiply by 160, you are getting over 70 million liters per day. And we say we are importing...
With a functional refinery.
For functional refinery. And we say we are importing 66.6 million liters per day. And we are paying 400 billion now per month for importation of what we could easily get. And even have extra that we can sell. Because when you refine 445,000 barrels per day, you should have over 70 million liters. But what do? We had a report, there was a time we had to import fuel from Niger. We import fuel from countries that don't produce up to what we produce. There are people who are benefiting. There are people, now we started, initially, we started from saying, we no longer have subsidy. What we have is under recovery. When that lie couldn't hold anymore, we came out to say, we're actually paying subsidy. As at that time, I think it was about 120 billion. But now, I think last month or so, NNPC came out to say it's now 400 billion. Who does it benefit? We don't have roads. We don't have hospitals. We don't even have good markets that women can go to. We still have primary health centers in our communities that you cannot even have Panadol. If you go there, it's expired drugs. Those days, you used to have medical doctors like UCOR members who go there, and you no longer can get them. Our people are leaving because we're not paying salaries. We're owing salaries. People kill themselves because they want to get into position, because they want to get a slice of the national cake that we have. Okay. And yet that cake is so baked that the women cannot even have it. Then just finally, please. The issue of subsidy, we must look ourselves in the face and tell ourselves the truth. Subsidy is on production, not on consumption. What we do in this country is that some people sit down, they go and register. If you are a friend to the person in the office, they give you a license, go and bring this. And how have we been able to verify that we're actually using 66 million liters per day? All our national depots that we have in this country are not working. And you're putting our petrol in private depot, which is additional to the cost of money that you say you are paying. So who is benefiting? Wow. And who are we deceiving?
Points well made and well taken. Thank you. Let me stop you there. Because you have really released some shots, if you ask me. Naturally, change is inevitable. And when you fail to change will change you. And when change changes you, you are in a serious difficulty. That is applicable, ramifications as far as life is concerned. And I'm going to come to you, Chijioke Abolu. You're an independent marketer. And you're also one of those persons, perhaps some people believe, are benefiting from this subsidy because you are a dealer. Please, let us know the nexus between independent marketers and it's like NNPC or government and whatever. Let us know how this fuel issue, in fact, from importation to the filling station, what transpires and what are the issues. In Enugu, for instance, and other states, outside Abuja, you get this fuel 250. In fact, in Enugu, last 2 weeks ago, about 245 per liter, right? We are seeing the same nation, and that is obtainable in other parts of the country. Apart from Abuja, where marketers could not adjust, their price, perhaps because this is the administrative, headquarters of Nigeria. You can't do that and get away with it. But in the subnational levels, people are getting away with it. As a matter of fact, I bought 450 naira a liter as the last month in Enugu. I bought it. I'm not saying that somebody told me. 450 before it came down to 350, 380 in the same city. And we have governor, we have people who have independent marketers like you. So what are the issues?
Good morning. Point of correction. Our company, Data Gas Analytics and Solutions, is a partner to Ipman to provide solutions to the removal of fuel subsidy. So I don't think I can. Yes.
Because I said independent marketer and
not part of it.
Yes. No, we're here to deliver the solution.
But you're not an independent marketer.
No, I'm representing them.
You work with them.
Yes, yes.
Again,
we're here to present a solution to the fuel subsidy issue, and to add to what Professor said and what Madam passionately mentioned. People don't realize that petroleum subsidy has so many negative ramifications, right? So with the removal of the subsidy for petrol, what people don't also know is that the transportation of petrol is subsidized.
Yes.
Transportation of petrol is mostly fueled by diesel, and like she pointed out, it's unsubsidized, right? So if you now remove petroleum subsidy, and the poor masses have to deal with the reality of moving 40 trucks of petrol by trucks that consume pay 900 liters per liter for diesel. The shock is probably going to approach over 1,000 naira, right? So the reason why people in Abuja pay less for petrol compared to those in Enugu and Kebbi and Sokoto is probably because I don't know, maybe the subsidy of the conveyance of petrol the payment is made swiftly or whatever, but there are so many layers of subsidies going on here. And the other big one, like she mentioned, is NNPC imports 70 liters of petrol a day. 70 liters of petrol, 70 million liters of petrol a day. If you Google number of petrol generators in Nigeria, that is including our past my labor generators, the result that will come up is between 22 million to 100 million generators, right? I know NNPC and NMDPRA and the marketers have been invited to the House and Senate to give account why we have only 11 million cars or slightly over 11 million vehicles, and you're telling me they consume 70 million liters a day. It doesn't count, right? But if you take into account 22 to 100 million generators that run on petrol, if they consume 1 liter a day, which you and I know they consume more than 1 liter, you're talking of between 30 to 50 million liters every day. So we're not only subsidizing petrol, we're subsidizing the power sector. What happens when the light goes off? You hear generators going off all the time. So power is a big contributor to the hardships we're facing as a result of petroleum subsidy, right? So while we're waiting to join you, you mentioned that Ipman wrote to Minister of Finance based on the partnership we have with them to look at setting up gas stations on the existing network. Now, most countries where petroleum subsidy regime were implemented, with the removal, government usually offers an option. For Nigeria, gas is that option, right? For so many reasons. We met with the president, President Buhari, last year to inform him that we'd reached an agreement with Ipman on 2 major products. One of them is to come up with a plan to use their network of over 30,000 filling stations, which includes both those that are operational and those that have been abandoned, to set up CNG filling stations, right, as an option. The most practical, effective, and impactful solution to fuel subsidy removal. And the second one is on a product that will address another concern that Madam raised, which no one is talking about. And that is the fact that less than 5% of Nigerians have access to clean cooking gas, which means a population of 290 million people, close to 200 million people every day, just think of this number, depend on food prepared using biomass.
Chijioke, for clarity, for the benefit of our viewers, you say that gas is a clear alternative to oil subsidy. Please explain further, because gas, I don't know how many cars that use gas in Nigeria.
Sure.
If you're talking about cooking gas, yes, but please explain further. Yes.
Sure. So your cooking gas is LPG, mostly propane and butane, but for Nigeria we use mostly butane. The gas we're talking about is natural gas, mostly methane, some C2 there, ethane, right? So the cost of, are you aware that you can buy gas in Benin City today at a price of 110 naira a litre equivalent, right? Instead of 195 naira. You can actually spend the equivalent of 110 naira to fuel your car per litre, right? And since 2007, vehicles, thousands of mass transit operators have been converted to gas in Benin. They've never had one fuel scarcity because, unlike petrol, natural gas is 100% domestic.
And we have it in abundance.
Yes, it gets better. And everyone knows that the world is aggressively pushing for the decarbonization of the world, right? Now, all of us here have our opinions on why we flare gas. We're entitled to our opinions, but we're not entitled to our facts. The reason we flare close to 1 billion standard cubic feet of gas every day is there's no market for gas. There's demand for gas, clearly. At 110 naira, mind you, your diesel truck can be converted to gas. So instead of 900 naira a litre, you're paying 110. What will happen to the cost of fuel? It comes down. What will happen to the cost of transportation? It comes down, right? Additionally, it's safer. When you are in an accident with petrol, because it's liquid, it pulls on the ground where it constitutes an explosion hazard. But because natural gas is stored under high pressure, if there is an accident, it quickly evaporates. If you Google explosion as a result of an accident with a CNG vehicle in Benin, you won't find any incident.
Please, right? What does it take to convert a car to gas?
Sure. So to convert a keke, it costs about 150,000 to convert a keke to natural gas. To convert a diesel truck, probably 15 million. To convert an Uber, a 4-cylinder Uber, 350 to 400,000, right? So according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, there are 11 million vehicles in the country, about 6.7 million commercial vehicles. So for 100 billion naira, for example, you can convert about 500,000 keke and vehicles, right? If they consume 5 liters of petrol a day, we know they consume way more than that. In a year, you will spend over 300 billion to fuel less than 10% of the commercial vehicles, right? Remember, 100 billion naira to convert 500,000 vehicles. To run on gas, 100% domestic. So if you went to import petrol at 350, landing cost, the average price is between 350 to 450, but let's use 350. So to fuel just 500,000 commercial vehicles that consume 5 liters of petrol a day, you spend over 300 billion, or the equivalent of $760 million at the exchange rate, right? So for 100 billion only, not only are you removing the need for close to $1 billion.
Now, so who pays for the conversion?
Pardon?
Who pays for the conversion?
So what that man is saying is, CBN has 250 billion gas expansion fund. The federal government is expecting $800 million, right? A more sustainable solution will be to provide these funds in the form of easily accessible loans, right? The gas expansion was set up for people to be able to access it to support gas utilization in the country. But what we have now, from the last data I looked at, about 48 billion was disbursed, probably more than that, and 8 companies benefited from 48 billion. But if you took out 100 billion, 500,000 Nigerians will benefit from it, right? And because IPMAN has a spread to support a national rollout, right? If you only convert vehicles that are in the Niger Delta because gas there is cheap. Now, the onion producers in Sokoto, where food is cheap, or the rice or beans, having to transport their vehicle on 900 naira a litre, we suffer. So we have cheap gas. So IPMAN has the best platform to ensure that the benefit of this gas is felt everywhere, because...
Indeed, yes. It's felt everywhere. We'll come back to that as we go deeper into the conversation. Let me bring in Professor Owaleke. One of the benefits of oil subsidy removal is also ensuring private sector participation in the importation of petroleum products, which will in turn free the markets. Let's talk more about that.
Oh yes, Jumai. You see, what subsidy does is to crowd out the private sector. And that is why over the years we've not had a significant investment, coming from the private sector in the downstream sector, of our oil industry. Okay, you have refineries that are not working, and you are subsidizing fuel. So you are not opening doors for private sector to come, because when you subsidize, you don't create a level playing field. Thank God, Dangote refinery, will soon come on stream. But Dangote refinery cannot, even break even in a situation where some others are being, subsidized. So when you remove the subsidy, you create a level playing field, and that is why the Petroleum Industry Act, okay, is very clear that, of course, it is meant to open up the sector and then attract more, private sector investors. And when you have more private people, playing in that space with a lot of modular refineries, for example, of course, that will translate to, more job opportunities. Just recently, I'm sure you read it, Ghana removed also fuel subsidy. And it's not only removing fuel subsidy, the National Petroleum Authority in Ghana is also saying that it's providing a special fund to help industries in Ghana to ensure that the supply is stable. Okay, so it's not only Ghana. I was talking about countries that have been successful, or relatively successful, with respect to fuel subsidy removal. Indonesia is also one of them. Last year again, Indonesia removed, or rather reduced, fuel subsidy by 31%. You can also mention the case of India. But what you now find, the commonality with respect to these countries, has to do with the measures that they put in place, to ensure that the fuel subsidy removal is embraced by the populace, because of course it's an unpopular policy, and that's why in many countries you find that it is not usually undertaken by a government that is in its first term. Okay, it's usually, what studies have shown, is usually undertaken by a government that is not seeking a second term. So you can afford to take that, because that bold and unpopular step, which is also why I think that this particular administration is in a better position to implement it than saying we want to push it to the next administration. To be a baptism of fire. A baptism of fire. Remember, the next administration was struggling to stabilize, so you don't start with a very unpopular policy. So it is this administration that should really put together these measures and also see to its implementation. So in a nutshell, the World Bank has come up to say, identified 3 main factors, okay, if you like, key success factors behind fossil fuel subsidy removal. The first one is putting in place compensation measures. You want to remove fuel subsidy, our sister mentioned, talked about it. The vulnerable, okay, the very poor, you must take care of them. How do you take care of them? By putting in place compensation measures. These compensation measures can take the form of cash transfers, which the Minister of Finance was talking about. But again, those cash transfers work in areas, in jurisdictions where the democratic, what they call trust deficit is not very high. So if trust deficit is very high, or democratic deficit is very high, where citizens doubt, the ability of the government to even implement that, then that may not work. So in addition to the cash transfers, for example, they also use social spending. So we expect to see the savings in health. For example, she talked about many areas where the primary health care centers, no drugs. So these are areas you can also look into. I have also advocated, that if you look at the National Social Health Insurance Scheme, it's covering just 5% of, or less than 5% of the population. So this is an opportunity to expand the National Health Insurance Scheme so that a lot more Nigerians can benefit. Because the more you reduce the out-of-pocket expense of Nigerians, okay, the more you cushion the impact of the removal. Because what is the removal going to bring about? It's going to bring about spike in,
prices.
Yes, in prices. So
cost of life.
Yes, inflation is likely to go up. Today, inflation rate is 21.91%. If you take out oil subsidy today, you can be sure that inflation rate will further go up. And inflation rate is going up, interest rate is also going up. Central bank is increasing monetary policy rate to fight inflation. Interest rate is going up. Exchange rate is also going up. Then the poverty level, misery index, will rise. So the thing is, put in place compensation measures, ensure that the vulnerable really get these benefits. I talked about health. There's also education, and then social sustainable jobs. That can also be in the area of ensuring that skills acquisition centers are set up here and there. And some of these things you do in partnership with the private sector, which is why I agree with what Chijoke has said here. The idea of also committing part of these funds to conversion of these vehicles. Okay, what he has said here to me makes a lot of sense. You are as spending 1 billion to convert about 500,000, if I got you right. Yes. To gas. So it's a one-off. It's a one-off expense. Okay. So for me, it makes a lot of sense. So the $800 million, dollars we are getting. Maybe I will also come to that later. Because I've seen people talk, argue against it. But I don't think because it's from the World Bank, because it has not come from the private international capital market. It's from the World Bank. It's concessional. It's a long term. I think it's something that Nigeria needs. So we should take the 800 million, okay, but ensure that we apply the 800 million very, very wisely. So I know I mentioned 3 factors. Let me quickly finish them. Compensation measures. The second factor has to do with engagements, consultations, okay, and communication. You have to communicate the reasons why you want to remove this subsidy. And in doing so, you have to be transparent. Transparency also has to do with getting people to know what this what this actual cost subsidy is all about. The size of the cost subsidy, who are benefiting, how are the costs distributed. And these are something in many countries, that are preceded by independent research. Independent research will bring out these things before, you begin to implement them. Okay, and then finally, the third factor has to do with the implementation plan. It has to be phased. In many countries where this has succeeded, it's usually phased. And that's why Indonesia, just last year, as I said, started by reducing by 31%. So over time, you phase it such that the impact is not
Prof, yes, you're ending on a very good note. The issue of implementing it by phase by phase, so that we don't have that
shock, yes.
right? But what is being planned now, from what we understand, is that it's going to be taken out outrightly. I'm not sure that the plan is to do it gradually.
No, the Minister of
because the argument is that
Finance says it's going to be
18 months.
Yes, 18 months.
No, they are saying that from the time the PIA, came into force, that from that time to the end of June is 18 months. So already the time has lapsed.
Let me bring in once more Olayemi Success, and I'd like you to speak, take it from Chijioke, because Chijioke preferred solutions. He explained some very well articulated solutions. But in this country, we've always had the issue of implementing well documented, policy or plan, as the case may be. You talked about the conversion of vehicles in Nigeria. You also talked about the government also subsidizing such conversions, right? And I want you to tell Nigerians whether you are keen into that. I mean, do you will you subscribe to such measures as a kind of planned absorbing of the shock of removal of the subsidy?
Thank you so much. It's not only about an engineer, a mechanical engineer for that matter. I have an idea of what he's saying. But then, what I'm struggling to juxtapose from his point here is this. Remember, petrol is a major source of economy for Nigeria. If we are replacing it within the home now with another product, I am thinking, will it not at the end of the day affect our source of income? That's actually my concern. And I'm sure an average thinker will consider that. So there will be need to strike a balance. For example, now, if the global is preaching, let's go fuelless, it shouldn't be a message from Nigeria, as at now, until we successfully diversify, we have another source of economy. If we don't, and we join the people that are saying let's go fuelless, then we go sourceless. Then how do we sustain even the least of our expense? So that is actually another concern. But then, Prof has proffered some good suggestion, also Madam Faith. I would like, in addition to Madam Faith and Prof's suggestion, a consideration for compensation. I will appreciate a situation where the government focus on health and education. Because education on its own is another source of drain that, if adequately, call it subsidized or financed now, it will also in turn save us a lot. For example, according to MBS, we spend Nigeria spent about $1.8 billion for education outside Nigeria, just for last year alone. And you agree to that it's on the increase every year. Now, what are the factors for this outside Nigeria's or abroad education, for acquire education outside Nigeria? One of the major reasons is unreliability of our program in Nigeria. What do I mean by unreliability? You really know when you gain admission, you don't know when you graduate. If not for ASU strike, NASU strike, all the staff in the university, the strike and all that. Now, that is one side. Another factor is the quality of the education. People will tell you here, it's just the theory, no access to practical. You come out, you are half-baked and all that. These and many more are the major reasons behind the acquired education outside Nigeria. Now, if this is adequately addressed, imagine the capital flight of $1.8 billion in a year. Even 50% of it is retained, that is back to our economy. All of this, so in a way, doing compensation on education, we even offer our economy more funding against capital flight of taking our added money outside the Nigeria. And this outside the nation is not just America or UK, even Benin Republic and Nigeria. People go out to acquire education. Because if you have a daughter that you are seeing her growing, yet he has not gotten admission because of JAMB. If JAMB will tell you their problem, they will tell you. Annually, I doubt if Nigerian universities accommodate more than 30%. The hardly is around that 30% thereabout. So the rest will join next year. Then the figure keep increasing. The facility here, not enough. That's part of the reason why people have to go out to acquire this education. So if we save from fuel subsidy and we invest in education and health, we will again retain more funding to our economy. And if you subsidize education, I am convinced that it will be more beneficial to more Nigerians than subsidizing.
Yeah, I think before you land, I'd like you to land there properly. Yeah, from what Chijioke said, we are looking for solutions,
yes,
direct solutions, because if by June this year subsidy is removed, the shock will begin almost the next day. So, but he is now preferring solution to say, look, that there are remedies that could be put in place to ensure that this shock, does not really, distort the entire economic system of Nigeria. Right. So, if what he's preferring you think is possible, let us know the practicability of it. So you're an engineer, you understand when you change an engine,
yeah.
Yes, you convert an engine into another use, another product. Yes. Remember, all engines have their piston, ring, metal, or chuck, and all of that. How do you also convert all that all those items, or are they not necessary in a conversion of a vehicle, for instance?
No, to convert it is very simple. You just deal with the combustion channel of the engine alone. It doesn't have anything to do with the interior of your car, or your seat, or your shock absorber and all that. No, just the combustion channel.
Which is the part of the engine?
Which is part of the engine. It's very simple.
Okay.
It's very simple. And every engineer will know that. It's very simple. But now, like I said, I raised my concern. Communication of this is another factor. People need to know. So that people will not start taking that, you want to convert my car from petrol to gas, then are you sure it will not affect my shock absorber, it will not affect my speed rate, it will not affect all of this, and all of that. No. So the communication needs to be emphasized on. That is one. Secondly, they have been working on it, according to him. And in his example, he has only given Benin. Now, these gas stations, how readily available are they across the nation?
Sure.
You mentioned Benin. Do you have anyone in Abuja? Do you have anyone in the neighboring town of Benin in Akure? Do you have anyone in Gusau? Do you have anyone in Sokoto? I know that this must be available. Not just having anyone. If you take you from fuel station, you take it to a gas station, what have you achieved? Absolutely nothing. So these are the things that must be considered, and at least to be sure that they are already available.
Yes, and on that note, I would like to take a break. When we come back, the conversation is becoming interesting. As I begin to wind down, we'll talk more about the matters arising from the oil subsidy removal. We'll be right back. You're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and the discussion is on removal of oil subsidy. Well then, Kate, let me come to you. Removal of oil subsidy, like the forex subsidy, the two are sort of interlocked, and it needs political will to implement these policies and to put an end to what they call predatory practice. During the campaign, all the contestants talked about removing oil subsidy. Let's have your take on that. What does it portend for the incoming government here?
Thank you so much. During the campaigns, actually, we engaged a lot of the presidential candidates on this issue of oil subsidy removal. And because it was something they felt Nigerians were already, kind of galvanizing towards. And also the provision in the PIA, it was easy for them to just say, remove subsidy. But the question was, how are you going to do that? What is your short-term and your long-term plan to do that? All of the suggestions we have on the ground here are very wonderful ones, especially the utilization of gas. So since 2014, I've always advocated for issues around gas and all that. And when we talk about, for instance, I when I said stop gas flaring and all of that, even the federal government at the time started the gas commercialization project, which we don't know how far they have gone with it right now. If only all of those plans were put in place, I'm sure would have been able to address that. Now, another fundamental fact is that Nigeria is more of a gas nation than even a crude oil nation. We have more gas than a crude oil nation. So if we're able to utilize our gas in such a way that, for instance, all of these gas flaring points, that where I say I disagree with the fact that, or when we say gas flares, because we are not able to consume the gas, and that's why they are flaring it. It's because it is easier for the oil companies to flare that gas, and the penalties are just bigger. That's why they are flaring it. It's not because we are not able to utilize it. If you go to my community, for instance, in my local government, there's a gas flare point that is there, and January 5th I went there, I also recorded it. It's still flaring. If you utilize that gas, provide a gas station for the community, provide electricity for them, give them access to gas in that community, you would have been able to solve the problem of energy within that community. So while we are saying we should remove subsidy from crude oil, we should also look at, and I like the ideas. I like the ideas that he put on the ground. The only concern I have is allowing Ipman to have the access to that. Look at the problems we're having already. We say that petrol is 195 naira per litre, and federal government say that they're paying subsidy about 200 to 205 naira per litre. But you still go to some of those filling stations and you're buying petrol for 350 naira. Members of Ipman, people who have access to buy the fuel, they are also the same ones who are exporting our crude, taking it out to other countries outside. I don't have a tanker. They are the owners of the tankers. They are the ones who go to the depots, and most of them are even owners of depots. And that is the reason why our national depots are not working. None. There is no single depot owned by the federal government in Nigeria that is working in this country. But we have privately owned depots that are working in this country. Now, why this project, this idea about utilizing natural gas is very good, and using the vehicle of Ipman to do that, how are we sure? Because Prof talked about trust deficit that we have. Even as much as we have trust deficit for government, we also have trust deficit for private sector, especially the oil and gas sector, because they have not helped the masses. They have not helped the ordinary people. We need to have solutions that the ordinary people can use. I know about the gas stations in Benin City. I grew up in Benin City. I still have an office in Benin City. I know about the CNG stations there. We had a meeting, and the fact of the matter is this. What we need to do is for the federal government to, one, be sincere about the implementation of this. Secondly, show us a plan. We have, in West Africa, we have the best climate change policy in West Africa. And we have just launched the just energy transition using gas and all of that. We are not only talking about the conversion of gas. You also have to begin to think about people who are going to lose their jobs in the crude oil sector, such that you need to provide them training to be able to have that. You need to, all of these NDE trainings we're doing, can we have people who will train young men and women on how to do the conversion? Mm-hmm. If you have them readily available, is it possible that when you now have these gas stations embedded within the filling stations that you have, you no longer will go there? Even with filling stations that sell 195 naira, you have to pay like 500 or 1,000 naira before you can even get fuel.
Yes. To give you.
To give you. So what is the guarantee that Ipman, that is bringing forth this solution, which I am very happy that is happening, but must be integrated in such a way that it benefits myself, it benefits the woman in the village, and she understands that. And you know, there's also this mentality about the usage of gas. If you go to my community and you buy a gas cooker and give to a woman, she will not use it because they say, oh, you know, this gas, because it's LPG, it explodes and all of that. But we need to find a way to educate the people to understand that. Number one, we need to be able to give opportunities for young persons to understand this technology. Number two, we need to give enough information to let people know that this is one of the strategies we can use for our climate change actions and things to reduce the usage of crude. And of course, it doesn't really take out jobs from us, because we have more gas in the country than even crude. It will even give us more revenue. Remember, finally, the utilization of gas would really help us as a country. Look at what is happening with Russia and Ukraine. We have not even utilized that. We have the West African gas pipeline. We have the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline that is supposed to have been concluded since. That will take gas to Spain and supply energy to Europe. Nobody is talking about that.
It's all about political will.
We need to put on the ground for us to do that. But again, I like the fact that Ipman is pursuing this, but we need to further decentralize it and get the commitment of Ipman that if this happens, we will not go the same way we have gone with PMS.
Points well made. I hope viewers are tapping from this, because you've just made a very good point. Certain beautifully articulated the programs and activities or policies are poorly implemented, and this is what you get. For instance, the gas pipeline that she talked about now. You see, you say we have more gas. Yes, Nigeria has over 202 trillion, cubic feet of gas untapped. With Imo State recording the highest, untapped ones, right? So when you say gas flaring, most pilots, that I've met will tell that when they are crossing over Nigeria, they have in the night they have some touch lights in Nigeria, at different points, which is a gas flaring points that I should also mention. Now let me bring you in again, Chijioke. You really brought in a crucial point in this program, which has to do with solution that will be used to cushion the effect of oil subsidy removal. You're bringing Ipman. We know the history of Ipman. We know how Ipman has held this country to ransom on so many occasions of not, transporting fuel for one reason or the other. If one tanker driver has issue with the police, Ipman will down tools and stuff like that. Now, if we now divert to gas, as you have proposed, which of course one of the best options so far, how are we sure that Ipman will not go back to do what they used to do? And you're going to also use coexist, both gas and filling stations at the same time. So now, the Ipman's role is one point that you're also going to tackle. And again, ownership of depot. Ownership of depots. No depot is working in Nigeria today. Right. So now, how would all of this not come in again to become a corrupt practice and unimplementable as we have experienced in the past?
Thank you. Let me quickly address a point he raised before we went on break, and that is the adoption of gas may likely threaten revenue generation from crude oil, being an oil economy. Actually, adopting gas will allow us to export more revenue and increase our forex reserves, which will be better for the country. We're not going to eliminate petrol. We're not going to eliminate diesel in the next 10, 30 years. Probably the best case scenario is we get 25 to 25% of our vehicles running on gas, which would be a really good thing. And the other solution being pushed by Professor, I think has some challenges because the world is moving away from funding crude oil based project. It's going to be difficult to go to World Bank or any of the international lenders, which is where you're going to get the dollars to build the refinery, to give you money to build a refinery. It's pretty much going to be impossible. But if you tell them you need funding to invest in converting flare gas in a village, which is primarily being flared because there is no market for it. Now, what it takes to use that gas is the problem, right? You have to convert your vehicle, right, to convert it in sufficient numbers for the oil company flaring gas in a community to invest in gas processing plant, right? Very critical. So gas is not like petrol where you can build a petrol station and wait for customers to come. Gas infrastructure is driven by demand, a demand that can pay 100%. That is why Ipman is saying provide access to loans for Nigerians to convert, right? Based on that, they can now approach the likes of the gas producer in a village and tell her, look, we have 1 million vehicles that can take this gas, right? Pay 100% for it. So invest in gas processing so we can harness this gas. The problem with gas is demand. There's no market for it, right? And if you consider what Professor said, majority of Nigerians are poor. They don't have the money to convert their keke. They don't have the funds to convert their vehicles, right? And the other benefit is most of the vehicles in the country are old. We have 800,000 diesel trucks. PwC estimates that over 90% of those trucks are 40 years old. Now, they emit converting those old vehicles to natural gas, you reduce emissions by almost 60%. Now, that is the kind of story that can attract funding we need. Going to look for funding for a refinery, you won't get it, right? And if you borrow that $2-3 billion to build a refinery, how are you going to pay the dollars back when your receivable is in naira? So natural gas is probably the only solution. And IPMAN, having existing infrastructure, makes it the cheapest platform to deliver this. Because when you go to pay for petrol or you go to pay for gas, you're not just paying for that gas, you're paying for the infrastructure, right? So with existing infrastructure, co-locating natural gas dispensers, you reduce your capex, and the end result is the cheapest possible product called gas, which most international development financing institutions, because they want Africa to transition from hydrocarbon fuels to the cleanest hydrocarbon, which is natural gas. It's a lot easier to attract funding for natural gas project than it is to attract funding to build refineries.
In your estimation, how long will this policy be implemented before it can impact on Nigerians? Because we are talking about impacting. You know, we have over the years, we will have this issue of ensuring that policies are properly and adequately implemented. And you know, when you don't implement a policy properly, people don't benefit from that. I also know that in every policy of government, anywhere in the world, some will complain about the policy, some will benefit from the policy, as the case may be. But the one that benefits, you know, a majority of the people could be the one that, you know, that can go. So how would this implementation really begin to enjoy it if by June oil subsidy is removed?
Sure. So the best policies are the ones driven by private sector, with enabling environment provided by government, which is what this is. The solution is here. There's already 250 billion to support gas expansion. It's there. So what we're saying, but IPMAN member cannot go to the bank to borrow $300,000 to build a CNG station when the consumer is not there. A gas producer flaring gas in Madam Faith's village will not build a gas processing infrastructure when he knows the consumer is not there, right? We will not be able to say, okay, we need to train 5 youths, 2 women on conversion without knowing how many vehicles, right? So by focusing on a business approach that is driven by a demand that can pay for that product, we will know how many youths need to be trained to convert this number of vehicles. We will know how much gas we need. We'll be able to forecast that we're using 100 million scoff of gas today, but because this price is cheaper than petrol, cheaper than diesel, in 2, 3, 4 years, we'll probably need an additional 500 million scoff. You have a basis on which to start, right? And then lastly, Madam, what people don't also realize is, yes, we have insecurity, right? How often do you call police that you have a case and they ask you to provide money for fueling? They never have enough money for fuel. But with gas, and imagine what will happen when you remove fuel subsidy. Nobody's talking about that. So you'll probably have to go with wheelbarrow to take police to, because they can't even afford it at 195, at 1,000. Yeah. Whereas with gas, it's going to be cheaper than what police is paying for fuel. So fighting insecurity by converting our security vehicles to gas, by providing loans to the civil servants to convert to gas, you're saving them more money, you're improving the service delivery.
We're running out of time. I'm bringing in Professor Waleke. We have 2 more minutes to go.
Yes. That's one point he made, which I also like him to key into, is the fact that that Faith made, communication. Like she said, that if you bring a cooking gas to a village woman, she will say no to that because she doesn't have correct information. Because you know there can be no proper development without communication. Sure. But there can be communication without development. If that doesn't happen, then of course we're not getting the point.
In 10 seconds, right? So crude oil refineries, best case scenario, 2-3 years before you have one. Natural gas is plug and play. We're talking about 3, 4, 5 months. Yeah. You have the complete infrastructure ready, but it has to be driven by a demand that can pay 100%. Exactly. Egypt provided 10-year loan, 3% interest to convert vehicles and buy gas. That is how they achieved very high rate of conversion to gas. Yes. Thank you.
The economy has to be driven by demand.
That
can just have your final take on that.
Yes, Juma, you're very correct. There is no doubt that removing this subsidy will, in the medium to long term, be in the interest of the economy. There's also this aspect that we forget to point out, and that's the fact that if you succeed in removing fuel subsidy, it will also help you to implement forex reforms. Mm-hmm. Today, the clamor is for unification of exchange rates. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you can't unify exchange rates when you're having fuel subsidy, because part of the subsidy too is that the
interlocked.
No, yes, the forex is given to this fuel importation at a subsidized rate. So if you take out fuel subsidy, it's easier for you to unify exchange rate. So for me, consultation is very key. The government said they got $800 billion, dollars. They want to use it for, first tranche. They want to use it for palliatives, particularly cash transfer. Labor, all the critical NGOs and so on must be involved. Yes. Okay. In fact, they must agree on what the money, should be used for. And it's also important that all these things are you precede them by conducting a serious research. Who are the most vulnerable? Yes. Okay, it's only when you identify them that you can now properly target your interventions. Otherwise, it may be counterproductive.
Some pertinent questions have been raised in this conversation today on the oil, removal of oil subsidy, its effect on the economy and on the most vulnerable in Nigeria. Well, Professor Uche Owaleke, Professor of Capital Market, Nasarawa State University. It's been a pleasure as always to have you.
Thank you, Jumai.
We talk about money matters.
Money matters. Stocks and bonds.
Yes, Chijoke Amonu, Independent Marketer and Managing Director, Gas Analytics and Solutions Limited. Thank you so much for your input.
My pleasure.
Olayemi, Success Chief Convener, Civil Society for Justice and Equity. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Jumai.
And my sister Faith Nwadishi, as always, your response has been valuable. We thank you so much for coming. Transparency, indeed, and that is what we all need in this country.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very explosive.
Yeah, it's quite explosive. Well, next is sports update, and Zambian club Zanaco part ways with former Nigerian international Emmanuel Amunike and Super Eagles forward Victor Osimhen misses Napoli training ahead of AC Milan tie. Let's join our sport desk for details.
Zambian Premier League club Zanaco have announced they have parted ways with their consultant coach Emmanuel Amunike. Amunike's assistant Emeka Amadi, as well as the head coach Kelvin Keidu, has also left the club. The former Nigerian international and his other technical crew members were sacked following the club's performance in the league. Zanaco lost 1-0 to Napsters at the weekend. The Bankers are winless in their last 8 league games with just 3 points off the relegation zone. Amunike was appointed by the club in September 2022. Former Chipolo Polo head coach Wetson Nerida has been appointed on an interim basis until the end of the season. Meanwhile, Victor Osimhen remains doubtful for Napoli's UEFA Champions League quarter-final first leg clash against AC Milan on Wednesday. The 24-year-old suffered a tear in his abductor muscle while on international duty with Nigeria at the end of last month. Osimhen has missed Napoli's last 2 Serie A games against AC Milan and Lecce as a result of the setback. Napoli had hoped to recover him for the first leg tie with AC Milan, but did not see the results they were hoping for in training. According to reports, Osimhen did not take part in squad training. Instead, he walked out individually on the pitch before heading to the gym. Napoli will not want to risk the forward if he is not fit enough to take part in the game. Osimhen will undergo a round of medical tests to determine his availability.
Well, and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for watching. We hope you're going to be with us again tomorrow when we return with a fresh edition of the Flagship Show on NTA. My name is Kirian Omayo. See you again tomorrow.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Do have a good day.